How does someone go from losing an arm to becoming one of the fastest drummers in the world? That's the story of Jason Barnes, and the story I intend to share with you today. This story, I believe, would inspire you if you're a parent of a child with some, I don't like the word disabilities, but for the sake of this video and for easy understanding, we would use the word disabled child. Someone who is raising a disabled teenager or a preteen. This story would inspire you. And if you're a parent, every week we upload videos with tools and tips that would ease your parenting experience. These tools are very practical, things you can apply every day to make your parenting experience more enjoyable. So please subscribe and follow. Also like and share so you can get this video to other people. So Jason Barnes, on a typical day, like every one of us experience, he went to work, and while at work, a transformer not very far from where he was exploded, and that left him with serious burns all over his body, 4th-degree burns. And he woke up in a hospital with those burns and everything. And that left him with two options. The doctors gave him two options. Option one is they would try to save the arm that got the most burns. That's going to take a number of years to get that done. Or the option B is to amputate, having to deal with that for the rest of his life. Now, for someone who is maybe doing other things that might not need their arms too much, well, I don't think it's anything that you wouldn't need your arms for, but you understand my gist. This is someone who, from the age of 14, his parents bought a drum for him on his 14th birthday, and he fell in love with drumming. He became so committed to it that he, at that age 22 when this thing was happening, he was already playing for 2 bands. Not just that, he was auditioning to go to a music school. So he has built his entire life around drumming. And so here he was in the hospital with 2 options: losing his arms. Now, at that point, the question would be, what happens to the dream of drumming? Because it would be difficult to be able to picture a future in drumming without an arm. But that was the choice he was left with, and so he decided that they should amputate. And so, after the amputation, his whole world and his whole life came crashing right before his eyes. And he spends a month or more just sitting down in front of television, playing games, as a lot of people do when we hit the rock bottom or the hard places of life. So he just got stuck, sitting down there in his parents' house, just watching television and playing games, just wasting away. But at some point, I think he struck something that every one of us needs at some point. And he realized he wouldn't be able to continue on this. But I don't know exactly what he was watching, but there's something in whatever he used to watch that brought him to that. Or maybe he had this reserve of resilience and fight back power that made him to say, I can't continue on this path. I'll have to do something to change the trajectory of my life. And so his drum had been packed up upstairs in the attic or somewhere, and then he brought the drum down for the first time after I can't remember how many months it was now. Brought the drum back down, set up his drum, decided to tie a drumstick to the amputated arm. So imagine arm amputated. And he tied a drumstick to it. And in his recount of his story, he said he had to endure serious pain to be able to practice his drumming again. But that single attempt and that single try on that particular day, in his words, shifted something. And he got back his fire and decided that he would pursue his dream with or without an arm. And so he continued practicing with the drumstick tied to the amputated arm and just continued practicing. 1 year later, he became so confident in his performance and his skills that he was able to enroll in the music school and continued on that path. Now, the story did not end there. Because he now had a challenge of wanting to excel in his drumming, and he had this challenge of an arm that needed support, he started working on prosthetics, something that would help him, to be able to drum again. And so he had beautiful ideas of how he could get prosthetics to help him do that. And somehow, he got in touch with a professor who is into the technology of developing those prosthetics. And he has been able to not just develop prosthetics that help him to play very well. He's at a point now where he played so well that he has the Guinness Book of Record of the fastest drummer. I think that was in 2019. He had that. And not just that, he has created or started a charity to help people who would need some form of prosthetic support to be able to achieve their musical dreams. And so this is the typical story of someone taking a misfortune, someone taking an end and turning that around. I've heard it said before that when one door opens and closes, or one door shuts, another one opens. Looking at this story, one of the things have really struggled with in this career of supporting parents with their teenagers is parents who have to deal with children who have some form of disability. Again, forgive the use of that word disability, but just for the sake of understanding, I just want to use it for now. Parents who have had to deal with or raise children who have one form of disability or the other, or not just physical disabilities. Sometimes it could be mental situations where the children have their brains function or respond or they perform in ways that are a bit unique. Autism would be an example. And these parents would have to support their young people. And that's one situation that I have struggled with helping parents with. But in the course of the journey of trying to support parents, I have, learned a few things that I think might be helpful to you. And the first tip or the first thing I would like to say about that is, depending on where you are. So in societies like in Nigeria, where I grew up, where the societal acceptance, stigma, and all the other things is still very high, the struggle is a bit different from maybe in a place like a UK, where I think it is becoming a bit, I wouldn't say norm, but it's becoming easier now for people to express and communicate their, challenges. Now, if you are in a place like Nigeria where the social, I think anywhere you are really, the first step for me really is you need to get to that point. The faster you get to the point of acceptance, the better. Because a lot of parents I have met who have children with one form of disability or the other, they go through a very long period of time refusing to accept the situation that life has handed to them. And so the child is suffering because they're not getting the support they need. And you are also going through excessive stress because you're not able to get the support you need for yourself. So the first thing is, I think you need to, whatever you need to do to bring yourself to that point of acceptance, to say, this is a responsibility that life has handed to me. And if you believe in God, this is a responsibility that God has handed to me. And I'll have to rise up to it. And that's very important because you're not just standing up for yourself. You're standing up for this young person who has not made or played any part in this situation that they found themselves in. And don't get me wrong, a lot of these parents love their children to bits. But society is structured in such a way that a lot of people struggle with a lot of things. First is this sense of guilt. Is there something I may have done to contribute to this situation? And then you go through all of that. And then you have some nasty people in society who would actually tell you to your face and who would actually laugh at you, who actually say nasty things in such situations. But you need to toughen up. You need to get to a point where those things hit you and you position yourself to realize that this is a responsibility I have and I'm going to push through it, come what may. So that point number one. That acceptance then leads you to a point where you find and shine the sparks. In the story of Jason that I shared, he said after that drumming, something shifted. And that's what I refer to as the spark, right? In every disability, and I know it's you can't say it's easy for me to say, but please just follow me, and hopefully something would come out of this. In almost every disability, some a bit more difficult than others, there's a shine somewhere. There's something that you can do. There's an ability in every disability. Your first task as the parent is to try to find that ability Find it and show it and allow it to shine. That might be in the form of supporting the young person to do certain things. It could be in the form of maybe a video or something that would support other people. Because sometimes when life throws things at people, there's this feeling that they are at rock bottom. There's nowhere deeper than where they are. But when they see other people's story, it tends to inspire them to be able to push a bit further. So just by maybe sharing your experience with helping your young person, there might be a message in there that would benefit a lot of people. So what I'm saying in essence is look carefully at that situation. Now you've accepted it. What is that ability in this disability that you can zero in on, that you can take advantage of and make the most of it? I mean, there are loads of stories of people who found themselves in impossible disability situations and who turned it around. Helen Keller is an example that always comes to mind when I think of these things. Helen Keller, at 19 months old baby who became deaf and blind at the same time. For most people, that's the end of the end. And I'm aware that Helen Keller had some extraordinary form of support that a lot of people do not have access to. But the fact of the gist is she was able, with support, to turn that rock bottom into a celebrity situation. Now, Helen Keller, in one of the interviews I read somewhere, she said if she had the opportunity again, she would choose her current situation. This is someone who went on to write at least 14 books, someone who went on to visit and speak in over 30 countries, deaf and blind from childhood. So, what I'm saying is, there is some form of ability in that disability. Give it all it takes. Find it and support that young person to make it shine. Find it. You can do that. If Helen Keller can, you can. If the numerous people online, just go online and see all the people who are struggling and pushing through their disabilities to make differences. If they can, you can. And you're not just doing it for yourself, you're doing it for that child who needs you to do it for them. Help them find that spark, that thing that needs to shift for them to make the most of their situation. Help them find it. The third and the final thing is you need to be stubborn about finding and getting help. Society, unfortunately, is not designed to support a lot of these people with one form of disability or the other. And some societies even more so than others. Now, if you talk of a place like Nigeria, my goodness, you can't compare the situations. But in the other advantages, we have a global village now. If you spend some time online looking for things, you could find and you could get ideas that you can then improvise in your own space to get all the support that you need for your young person. You have to be tough and stubborn about finding. You're dealing with an abnormal situation. Society is not designed. So the norm of society is not what suits that child that God has given to you. And what you have to do at that point is to push through by being stubborn. When you hit roadblocks, you insist that something has to come out. Not because of you, but because you have a responsibility for this young person to break through barriers that have been there for ages. So there's some element of stubbornness, some element of insistence that you need to get through that phase. So, Jason Barnes, a young man who had beautiful, good dreams, hit rock bottom when he lost his arm. He almost gave up, and like a lot of us, spent some time in front of his television and his game to escape the situation, but eventually found light somewhere and went on to become a fastest drummer in the world without an arm. And so, looking at your young person who has one form of disability or the other, I am saying, accept the situation so you can make the most of it. Find and shine that spark that would create the shift the child needs and that you need. And number 3, be stubborn about finding and getting help. There's help somewhere. It's hard to find because society is not designed to help that your young person, but stubbornness, some form of stubbornness, some level of stubbornness would help you find it. So go for it. Leave a comment in the comment section and let me know how it's going. If you're happy and able to, you could just leave some of the things you're struggling with, and I might be able to share a few more tips that might be able to help. I think practical things you could do depending on the situation you're going through. But to end the video, I'd like to just say, we see you and thank you for all you're doing, not just for yourself, but for that young person.